steal my kitchen stool. I couldn't find my other stool. A little bit of sideways because I have a light up. But hi, if you see me looking over here, that's because that's where I have my iPad so I can chit chat with you. So welcome, friends. Let's see. Hold on. Let me refresh to make sure I am good to go. Oh, maybe it's because I'm not live yet. Commented on your post. Hi. Oh, okay, good. Hold on. I'm going through the YouTube. Okay, fantastic. Any tips on how to hold your yarn? We're just gonna dive right in. Fantastic. Welcome. So if you see me pushing buttons, that's what we're doing. So welcome, friends. It is week 2. I did bring my list of questions. Hello, Lucille. So I took some questions that you guys asked me. Hello, friends. So I took some questions that you guys asked me on Patreon. I see you. Hello, Mama. How are you? Thank you. Fantastic. I got a little sideways view. I know you would tell me to look at the table. You're not going to see much of my table, but here's a little sneak peek of it. I figured that sitting down was going to be a better view that way. Yeah, my mom is here. So that's always fun. Have you cast on? We've talked all other kinds of things. But we haven't talked about whether she has done her cast on and ribbing section of the part. I know she had her hurt hand. Anyway, so week two, we had 2 issues. Yes, everybody say hi to Mama. So week 2 was math. So let's just start with the math questions. Are there any math questions there we go. Okay, good. No. Oh, you haven't started yet. No. I was like, oh, okay. That's okay. You got time to catch up. This is where I am right now. I am doing it live with you. I'm also doing all the other things that I do. But let's see. How far am I? I'm almost to 4 inches. So that's not bad. Look at the pretty rainbow. Pretty rainbow. Okay. So you had to help me with the math. Well, so the math was, let's just dive right into some of the math. Oh, you haven't done the math yet. I failed at swatching. Oh, no. Well, plenty of time. But you have your measurements. Okay, so that's fun. So what I thought we would do, there's a couple people that have messaged me, and we worked through their math. Oh my goodness, bless your heart. So we're just gonna do your math for you. It's gonna be great. And so we're gonna do the math. The math is not hard, but sometimes when you get into these fractional numbers, it gets a little, my math on the just worked out to be nice, even, pretty numbers. And then I know one of my friends, Zan, she messaged me and she's like, it's not mathing. First of all, love that she turned math into a verb, and I told her so. Yeah, there are many people. I see you, but I don't see the questions. Okay, Gwen, that's because, good thing this popped up. If you click over into the YouTube, so you are watching it, and we're learning together, but it's an unlisted video on YouTube. So right now you're watching it on Patreon, but if you click through Patreon, it will take you into the YouTube so you can watch it on YouTube, and that's where the questions are popping up. So hopefully that makes sense. You can't actually go live on Patreon. You can just link a live on another platform, i.e. YouTube. So I'll see your Patreon questions, mathing. I know, isn't that funny? I would see your Patreon questions, but actually they're popping up. So that's good because I'm using my phone as my video recorder. So, maybe we'll get through. If you have a question, pop it in and we'll see if I see it. But we're just going to work together. Are there any questions with the math? I thought it was pretty straightforward, but the most important part was your gauge swatch. If this wall, I was telling my needles to move the needles. Yeah. It's tricky. It's tricky. There's and a lot of my friends are, as I told you in the video, to give yourself grace because, first of all, I just want to say I'm so excited that we haven't had these trolls yet. If you were here last week, so organized. Well, thank you. This is still the pretty port. If I turned you around, which I can't turn you around right now because, to be honest with you, the camera is propped up on the April Keeper Club's keepers. There's a pile of keepers that you're sitting on, so I can't turn you around. But this is still kind of pretty. There's fat quarters and yarn, and this whole shelf. I haven't done a tour in the studio yet because I haven't found a time where I don't have secret stuff that I can't show you or that it's clean enough, let's be honest. But this shelf right here, this was a new shelf that I made, and it's more of those Michael drawers that have the Valdani. We're tangenting, we're squirreling for a minute. This is I'm calling it my wool applique shelf. And then there's some books. I've gone down the rabbit hole of quilting books and knitting books and all the things. Yes, and then I've got the keepers, my library right here. This is what you normally see, my rainbow fabric, my yarn collection, another yarn collection. Yeah, down below is when it gets a little messy. So we'll just keep I'm so glad you love the keepers. Thank you, Lucille. Thank you. So the first step was the gauge swatch. And I received a couple questions. So let's just talk about yarn weights. And so I'm going to answer some of the questions that I received either on Patreon or via direct message. Again, I just want to, like I always say, if somebody had the question, somebody else might have the question too. So I might as well just review it all here. No, I love the squirrel. Listen, I love organizing too. I love a good spreadsheet. I love a good clean day, which actually kind of turns into a clean weekend or clean week, as you might have found. If you were here with me this weekend over Instagram, you know that I went into the rabbit hole and found some stuff and squirreled and cleaned. And anyway, back to the questions of math. So we had talked about gauge swatching, and a couple of questions I received was yarn. If you got different weights of yarn or the same 2 DKs, but they weren't the same company or they weren't the same blend, whether you got 100% superwash merino or you have like an alpaca or a cotton or whatever, but it's still DK, right? Because that's what we're knitting the hat with. But the problem that you have to take into consideration, of course, I didn't poke it. I'm pro at the knit stitch. I love that. So over here, this is where the DK stuff is. If I went into the DK area right here and I pulled out 4 different random ones, they would not all be the same in that their blend of materials, whether it's wool or cotton or alpaca or silk or a nylon, 75-25, 80-20, all the things. Each indie dyer, whether you go to the big box store, and I also got questions about, can you go to the big store? Totally, you can go to the big box store and get some yarn. And swatch away, beautiful stuff. But the indie dyers, which is what most of the stuff I'm showing and I have in here, even though they all say DK superwash, they're not all, yes, okay, good. So they're not all using the same base, meaning like I said, if I pulled out 2 DKs, it would, like, one would be they're all 100-gram skeins because that's that's a standard, and they're called skeins or hanks, just so we're going to have I'll throw in some vocab in here just for funsies because I have some people asking every once in a while. But, some of the skeins, even if it's 100 grams, what could be 246 yards, could be 226 yards. I know the DK weight that my mom is using, which was the pink hat that I, have modeled and I stitched and all over. That was a little bit thicker. That was actually like 220 yards versus this one, which I don't have my yarn band on it, but I think it was more like 246. And that may not seem like a lot, but in the scheme of things, remember there are 3 components that give us our gauge. It's our yarn, our needles, and us. And just that little bit of change and difference can make a different gauge. So like Linda pointed out, she's actually using a fingering weight that I think she picked up at Hobby Lobby. She had a little fun, fantastic reel that was super fun that she shared on Instagram of her getting some fun hand-dyed yarn at Hobby Lobby, but they didn't have DK weight. So what she is doing, it sounds like either she knows somebody or she's not quite as new as some of us, is that she knows that if you hold a fingering weight, if you hold 2 of them together, if you hold the strand 2 and you're knitting with 2 at a time of fingering, that equals, those 2 fingerings will equal a DK approximately. Fingering is a skinnier yarn. That's what all of this is. Remember we talked about when we talked about materials, fingering is about 400 and change per 100 grams. So it's a lot longer. So you figured, yes, okay, good. So she's a crocheter. So she took her skills from that and popped it over to knitting. And she's right. So, but it's definitely important for items, I believe, and the foundation that I'm trying to set you up for success is that gauge swatching, although it's kind of like, can be not so fun. I know I'm with you, Lucille. I'm going to have a story to tell you about that in a minute. So, but it's one of those things where I just think the importance of gauge swatching, if it's going to be a wearable item, it's just, it's worth your weight in gold. It really is what it is. It's because I just don't, when you fit, especially if once, hopefully, so many of you are going to graduate from beanie land and either make beanies till the cows come home, or you're going to, maybe we'll learn knots together. I won't promise, because I've tried that a couple times. So either I get a special guest star who comes and teaches me, yes, or once if you invest your time, what size? Oh, okay, hold on. Oh, the Patreon questions don't say it very much. What size in sweater, if you go up to it, it's just so much more. It's just so important once you to gauge swatch. So take the time to set yourself up for success, and not only gauge knitting, but blocking it. And that was another question that I received was, what does it matter? Like, okay, you can measure your gauge before you block it. And the reality is, and what I've learned, unfortunately, by experience, is that you don't know how your yarn, especially based on the fiber content, is how it's going to react in water. Is it going to grow? Is it going to, they say bloom. I'm not quite sure why blooming is a terminology in knitting. I'm just sharing with you what they say. It's going to bloom in that it kind of opens up in the fibers, kind of let go a little bit and open up and kind of fill in the gaps type of situations. And so you just want to set yourself up for success in that gauge swatching and actually knitting the swatch, and then also blocking it so that you can get an accurate measurement, because you are going to have to wash your item eventually. And you don't, and so the cardigan, I should have brought it. The first cardigan I did, I gauge swatched and I gauge blocked it. But, and we're not going to get too much into it, but I just want to show you the importance of it. So when you gauge swatch, and of course, did I bring my swatch? No, I don't think so. But when you swatch, and obviously it doesn't have a knit and a purl, but when you measure, right now we're just measuring the horizontal gauge, right? I'm not going to try to overwhelm you, but the importance of things of when you're learning gauge in like a sweater, for example, is given in, don't be scared, it's going to be great. Gauge for a sweater is given in not only horizontal stitches per inch or stitches per 4 inches, remember, but it's also vertical. And why that's important in my experience is that superwash yarn grows longwise. So like my sweater, which is why we also take into account, we want to take that into account thankfully on a beanie, we're dealing with such small numbers that if it grows a half an inch, you just get a little extra. I should have brought a beanie to put on, but you just get a little extra slouch at the top or a little extra fold over. We're not talking big numbers on a beanie. So I didn't even open up that Pandora's box originally until today to tell you that it will grow a little bit. Thank you. But when you're doing with sleeves and you've got, I don't know, 2 feet, 3 feet of sleeves, that exponential, that growth is going to make monkey arm sleeves. Just saying. I don't hate it, but that's just something you have to consider. So we talked about yarn weights, and we talked about the holding 2 double fingering will give you the swatch, the correct weight, your beanie, and then someone else accidentally, oopsie daisied, because for the beanie you use 2 different size needles, and so we talked about how you need a size for your body. If you're using a DK weight yarn, which we're all using, you need a size 6 needle for the body, the top part. Of course, I didn't bring one that's to the top part yet, but we're using one size down, a US 5 for the ribbing, just because you want that to be a little extra, right? I can't even put it on yet. But somebody accidentally swatched with their 5s, and she asked me if that was okay. Now, of course, I'm not the knitting police. As we like to say in the stitching world, there's no stitching police. There's no knitting police. You do you. But I did tell her that unfortunately I can't help her. There's no algorithm or math or equation, which, I mean, I love a good math equation, that would give me the answer to, okay, she swatched in 6, or she's swatched in 5, but she's knitting in 6. What's going to happen? So that's one of those things where I suggested that, unfortunately, if she could still unravel her swatch, if she hadn't cut it, that's one of the reasons that I usually don't cut my swatches, because sometimes I have to start over again. Many of us have done that before, right? And actually take the time, take a night and stitch in the 6. So that's the question. So let's see. I think Lucille just popped up the question. I want to make sure I'm grabbing them. Will we read? Yes. And like I said, I should have brought a hat. I mean, Patrick was I was wearing a hat today when we were out and about. Each in a beanie, but they're all with the coat, and they're in the coat closet. But yes, so what you do, if you look at the still picture, me in a pink hat, it's on everything, right? It just, the ribbing is the 2x2 purl. So just, here we go we're going to talk about the math. So just this A part, which for me is 4.5 inches. So that's going to be 2x2. Next week, you're getting ahead of yourself. But next week, which is fine, which is fantastic. Next week, week 3, what we're going to do is we're going to pop into, we're going to switch our needles, right? Once you get your 4.5, then you're going to switch your needles. So I will show you how to switch. Well, I'll have to figure out how I'm going to do that. Maybe I'll have to, maybe I'll have to cast on another hat, because I can't switch it. Well, I'll have to switch it. I'm using interchangeable needles, and so that doesn't help you learn how to switch them. I mean, I could just switch them to the 6. That's what I'll have to do. So I'll have to just get my 6 off and other needles to show you how to switch it. Because if you didn't choose interchangeable, which you didn't need to by any stretch of the imagination. I had someone ask if the swatch was usable after we were done with it. Okay, great question. Then I want to make sure that I show you guys how to go from a 5 to a 6. My fixed 6 are on a different hat, so I will have to do that. But what we're going to do is we're going to finish the ribbing. We're going to knit stitch around a knit row, in switching our needles from the 5s to the 6. So you're going to be coming off the 5s onto the 6, and then we're going to knit around and around and around like crazy for part B. And that's week 3. So this is just the knit stitch. The changing the needles is not scary. No. No, it's just, and I wish I had if they weren't in the other room. If they were in this room, I'd go grab them. But my other knit hat bag is in the other room, is in my wheelie cart over by my stitchy spot. So all we're going to do, well, I'll just show you. So imagine this one was fixed to, the circular. This was, and instead of, we're going to go this way. It doesn't matter. But your right one, Instead of dealing with your right, you're going to keep that stopper on and you're just going to, it's easy. I promise. I promise. You know, I'm just going to show you and we're going to go slow and steady and we're going to do it. And the great thing is it's the knit stitch. And so after you've done 4 inches or more or less somewhere ish of the knit and purl, you're going to think you've like gone to, well, you didn't know you were going to love it. But I do strongly suggest that the interchangeable, if you decide to become a beanie maker for all of the people, it'll be great. If you decide that you are a beanie connoisseur, beanie maker, and everybody's getting beanies for in their Easter baskets, maybe you don't need them then. But if anybody's getting a beanie sometime soon and you're going to start making it all the time, and it's super fun. I love it. This is my on-the-go project, or anyway. Then I definitely highly recommend the interchangeables, because then all you're going to do, instead of having to knit with, 4 needles in your hand, it's a little tricky, not undoable. We're going to totally do it. Is all you do is screw it off. Super easy when you change needles. And then we're going to knit all the way around. I messed up joining the slip stitch, so I fudged it. Well, fantastic. You know that I am team fudge. If you are a stitcher, and all my cold weather friends, oh, you're down in Texas, aren't you, darling? I think you are. I think that's where you are. So yeah, that's not that. We were at 50 degrees today was my high, which is pretty exciting. It was 67 down in Clemson, where Lily was. And so I was like, oh, that's not really fair. But I took the 50 and I was happy with it. So that's the B. So the math chart. Are there any questions? I'm just trying to go through the questions I have. Yes, I thought you were down in Texas. So you don't have too many cold days. Your beanies are kind of just for looks. I mean, maybe you need a little bit. So it's one of the other questions, 70. Aw, that's pretty awesome. Now, does it get to be like 127 degrees in the summer though? Because that's the trade-off, I think. Maybe. I mean, it gets to be 127 degrees here sometimes. So another question that I received was regarding the long tail. And so bless her heart, she, no matter how many times she wound around, swatch shoes. Okay. Thank you. I totally would have forgot. Is that long tail. Okay. Hold on a minute. She had a super long tail, and that she didn't know what she was doing wrong. And because she, wrapped it around, if she needed to cast on, let's just say 100 stitches. I don't remember exactly what it was. But if she had to cast on and she was wrapping around and she ended up with this super long tail, and she was just like, what am I doing wrong? And so I explained to her that the wraparound method was kind of just a rough estimate. It was a ballpark. It was to get you in the neighborhood of the right long tail. It is not a secret science by any stretch of the imagination. And when you're swatching, it wasn't too like small or big. When I started learning to knit, a lot of people were just like, pull 3 arm lengths, which if you quilt, my mama taught me that fingertip to your nose, that's 1 yard. It's a very scientific measurement in case you didn't know. 1 yard. And so when you're playing with fabric, she's like, just pull. And so the long tail cast on, no matter how many stitches you had to cast on, just get 3 arm lengths. Well, this is a little more scientific than that, but not by much. So when if you do have a long tail, like, I don't know how much, I might have had like an extra foot after this. I do leave a little bit of a tail, I don't need to. I could totally weave in my ends and move on, but I wanted to save it for later. Yeah, I like the long tail. I like to have I think it helps. It's not super long. And then once you get good and deep into your ribbing, then you can feel and give yourself, you don't need this much tail for later either. We're only going to weave in, probably 2 or 3 inches of your tail will weave in later. That's not for today's lesson. But don't, if you're going to cut your tail, don't cut it all the way up to the top. We are going to, want to weave in some of our ends, very much like stitching. It's all like holding hands and singing Kumbaya, in that we're going to weave in our tail a little bit so that, rather than just cutting it at the knot. Because, this wasn't really, this was a slip knot, remember, where we started? Okay, so that answers that question. Okay, the gauge swatch. Don't worry, I remembered now. Yay. Um, is there a purpose for the gauge swatch after the fact? No, not that I know of. I just keep them in a drawer. I keep them in a drawer. Yeah, I don't know how to turn that off. It's because my channel is set up that way. I'm sorry, Lucille. There is, I'll have to figure out if I can override it by video, but there is a way. Your gauge swatch, two choices. You can unravel it if you don't cut it, and that can be usable scrap yarn. Make yourself a little crochet floweret on top of your featherweight. I think I've seen somebody make, maybe. Maybe don't cut and buy more yarn and add it to it. A coaster. You totally could make it a coaster. My beanie here works offshore, and sometimes he's a good. Oh, I love that. So for your grandson, did you have him measure his head? When you told me that you were measuring, that was for your grandson, he claimed it. I thought that was fantastic. And I was like, okay, now, was he there and you got his head measurements, or did you get it like, inquiring minds want to know, Judith. So I was, you can make it a coaster. Sure. The edges, I don't really, my edges are wonky. And so I wasn't something that I probably would, I probably critique myself. What I do is I just save them, like I said, I've had them in a drawer. That's how I'm able to show them to you for all my sweaters. And I kind of keep it as like, it's like my knitting journal, like our cross stitch journals, like the days, like, listen, I can talk to you guys because you know what I'm talking about. Like, our book of days. I have a knitting journal where it's not the same. It's not like the book of days, but I keep the yarn band, that I'm knitting from. I'd put a little swatch on it, usually from a scrap or something, and clip it on there. And then I attach it to, put it in there, and I wrote, it's fall of 22, I made this sweater, and here's the gauge swatch. And it says the yarn and the needles. And it's just a way to just show yourself. It was the hardest thing ever to cut the surplus long tail. Oh yeah, but you did it, yes. So, but it's one of those things where you just keep a record, and you'll see how you improve. And you see, like if I went back to my first swatch, which I didn't even knit in the round because it was for my cardigan. I didn't swatch my first hat, which is kind of why not only is it big, I'm keeping my first one. Things not to do. It's a mess. I love that. Yes. It's a reminder. It's a reminder. So I didn't swatch my first hat. It's a little big and it's pointy. I'll bring it and show and tell. Do you have longer interchangeable needles for knitting? I do. I have 2 sets, those for my sweater knitting. Yes, I love that. It's a keepsake. I have 2 sets, and I'll look over there because they're right there, but I can't. They're a hot mess. Hello there. So message retracted. I'm not quite sure. Oh, maybe you pulled it back. I don't know. So the question, okay, yes, I do have interchangeable. So these are my shorty interchangeables. And so these are good for a beanie, and they're also good for sweater sleeves. When you knit, not one of these type of sleeves, but when you knit like a regular sleeve, you use this gauge. So over there for my sweater, I have 2 sets of interchangeable needles. And I just love them. I only have long knitting needles, so I bought the same shorter ones for this project. And you got circle ones? Yes. I mean, obviously that's how we did this. So hopefully that makes sense. Did you get those off of Amazon? I got these ones off, huh? I got these. This is off of Amazon. There's a link in my Amazon shop for this set. They also, I know that someone might have told me that, okay, I'm gonna have to read out the questions over there. They're coming a little too fast now. So let me just answer, and then I'll go and read some questions. So I know that I believe Jessica had told me that some of the things had sold out in my Amazon storefront. But if you go to this link, Likey has a couple other ones that it's just a different colorway. Like, I think the 2024 color is not pink. This was actually the enabler. This is actually last year's colorway. So I think the 2024 is actually a rainbow of colors. Okay, so let's see. So did you get those off of Amazon? So I'm assuming you're asking about my shorty ones. My longer ones, I have a Chigu Forte, which I'll bring them next time. How about that? Or socks knit on shorter interchangeable. Okay, good. Okay, I'll have to tell those. Yes. So my Chigu Fortes, I do believe I have linked in my Amazon storefront, and those are my long sets. So I will bring those. Well, if you don't mind seeing it, I'll say. I think they're right here. No. Yeah, not so organized if I can't put my hands on it, right? Okay, well, they're over there. I'll bring them next time for sure. There's 2 sets of interchangeables. I have a Knitter's Pride one, day and night. It's a bamboo one. And then I also have Chigu. Those are my 2 sweater interchangeables, and I love them. Because I felt like I was buying, for sweaters, you need like, this is a 16-inch cord. We're using 16-inch rounds. When you're doing a big sweater, you need either 32 or 40. And so it's a big old thing, okay, so let me see. I only have long, how long do we need to keep the beginning of round marker? Okay, you keep the beginning of round marker the entire time we knit. So keep the questions coming. I'm just going to scroll through them as I read them, and we'll go to them. Yeah, so you keep the beginning of round marker, which I have delegated as the pink one. The count ones, that's up to you. That was just a beginner suggestion way to keep count. When you're casting on 108 stitches, going back and counting is frustrating. And so this was a way for you to just, count by tens and easy peasy. And then as long as you felt confident in I'm not dropping a stitch, or I'm not picking up an extra stitch. I know that some of my friends were struggling with their swatches, in that everybody started with 25. Some people were ending with 28, and some people were ending with 23, and they're not quite sure how or when or why it happened. And so having these markers, going around, we can just make sure that at any given time, there's always going to be 10 between there. But if at some point you realize, oh, pickles, there's 9, we're going to need to add a stitch back in, which we are going to talk about in week 3 as well. Or we're going to need to take a stitch back out because there's 11 instead of 10. And that's also part of week 3. It could have been part of week 2, but it is too, it's a lot of work. And B, I didn't want to overwhelm you with like 4 videos in 1 week. So hopefully you just go slow and steady on the knit and purl, and we're not dropping or adding accidentally. So let's see. How long do you keep your marker in? Question about knitting the round, my first ever. Would the knit stitch look like the swatch with the... Yes. Yes, Judith. Your knitting in the round is going to look exactly like your swatch. Again, should have brought a beanie. But that's exactly what it's going to look like. Just knit, knit, knit. It's the pretty knit stitch. And so that's what we're going to do after this ribbing. So same as yours. Oh, good. He got back from England and he got on a job. Oh, good. So you were able to get a head measurement. Will I have enough yarn after swatching to complete the hat? I've never swatched before. Sorry, I hit the send before I was typing. Oh, no worries. Okay, good, Teresa. I was just worried. If you weren't here last week, we had a little bit of a troll spammer problem, so I was worried. I thought that's what we have, but I think we're good today, which it seems like, we got nice. It's all knitters here. We're all just having a good time now. You will have plenty of yarn. So yeah, 100 grams. And so we talked about this. I don't remember when, but let's review. After I knit my pink hat, which was a 100-gram hank of yarn, I had 30 grams left after I knit it. And I didn't swatch it, and that's because I feel pretty confident with my DK gauge swatching, and that's just on me. But so I had 30 grams left, so it was about 30% left. So you will have plenty of yarn to finish your hat. You can't make two, but you will have plenty of yarn to swatch successfully, even swatch twice if you wanted to, because we had talked about also you know, you swatch for the gauge to come up with your gauge stitch. And then this week when I was doing the video too, I talked about how maybe if you were new to knitting and purling and you didn't want to go ahead and start with the knitting and purling at 108 stitches all around, but you wanted to practice your purl stitch, doing another 25 by 25 swatch, perfect. That's a perfect way to do it. Actually, the math won't work on that, but 2 by 2, it needs to divide by 4, remember? So 24 by 24. Our sock, I'm just going to start going through the, sorry if I'm looking, I don't want to miss a question. Our socks knit on short interchangeable needles. Okay, so socks are knit on 3 different needles. There's 3 different needle options for knitting socks. None of them are on a 16-inch. Needle option 1 is a 9-inch circular. So these are not short. They do make, this is the shorty set to make the 16-inch or a 12-inch circular, not a 9-inch. Chigu makes a shorty set interchangeable for socks, but I do have one of those. I do believe I can put my hands on that real quick. Yes. Nope, there's a 16-inch. So this is my 16-inch, well, pickles. Well, this is the Chigu, but the 9-inch circulars, well, they're all in socks, I think, actually, right now. I've got 3 socks going. But it's one of those situations where, so the socks are 3 different options. One is a 9-inch circular. So it's knit just like a hat, but instead of being 16 inches, your circular needles are 9 inches. Everything else is the same. But imagine it's a much smaller circumference, right? So it gets really finicky. And if you've ever looked at socks, it's a really tiny knit stitch. The second option for knitting socks is magic loop. And magic loop, I'm not even going to overwhelm you with that. Magic loop. It's a whole nother can of worms we're not going to open. The third one is DPNs. We are going to use and learn how to use DPNs when we finish off the crown of our hat. So you're going to get a little taste of the DPNs. My preference is DPNs over magic loop, which is why I just skipped over that little can of worms. So the DPNs are going to be an option. And you're going to learn the basics of DPNs when we finish the crown of our hat. And so that's what we're going to be learning. So that's the third way you can knit a sock. So hopefully that answers your questions. But no, you cannot use this set for socks because the needles... Uh-oh, I stopped. I don't know. The needles, the cords are too long. The 9 inches is the length. Our socks on your local quilt shop sells Likey. Good. Addie's are a good brand too. Yeah, Addie's are a very popular brand. What's my favorite brand of knitting needles? Okay, good. I'm back. My favorite brand of knitting needle. Oh, I'm not. Maybe next week you could show us how to hold the cake yarn in my right hand. Cake yarn in my right hand. We'll have to come back to that. That was a Patreon question, which is why I didn't want to lose it because it's not in my YouTube questions to go back to. I'm not quite sure I understand the question. My favorite brand, it depends on what I'm knitting, to be honest with you. And this was something somebody had asked me about. So Chigu are metal. And, well, these are Chigu. So Chigu are metal tips. So they have a red strip and a metal. And all the ones that I linked are wood. The Likey ones, as well as the Knitter Prides, are wood, bamboo-like. So, and you can also go to like your Michaels. They'll have like a, I think, clover type of brand of wood. But so the difference Why it depends on it depends on what you're working on, is they're slippery. Yeah, addies are metal too. You're right, exactly. So the metal are slippery, meaning which is pros and cons, right? Um, the slippery, I will tell you that my sweater, the purple bags, the purple wool sweater that I'm using, that I'm knitting from the Sistari wool, which is very sticky. That's also another lingo. Why it's not like it's made of honey, but it's sticky yarn. It's 100% wool, non-superwash. I want to give it as much slide as possible. So those are my Chigu Forte interchangeables, because I'm using big stitches, and it just makes it easier to slide back and forth. As a new, which is why I recommended to my newbies the Knitter's Pride or the Likey, was because the wood actually doesn't slide. It's not as slippery in that it won't slide right off. Yes, the wood helps keep them on. Exactly. So the wood is it. I mean, it doesn't. You can still slip a stitch. That's a tongue twister, isn't it? You can still slip a stitch on wood, no problem. It just is a little bit stickier than the slippery metal. So, will the markers? Brand is your favorite. Okay. Will the markers come off when you switch from one needle to the other when you come around? No. They don't have to. No, when we change needles, I'm going to keep mine. I'm keeping them on for you guys. So no, we can keep the markers on. I mean, you can take them off anytime you come to them. If you feel like you're good, you can totally take them off. But until you want to take them off, we can just keep them, spin them around and around, so they don't have to come off when we change needles, no problem. Yes, so you can leave the markers on till you're done. We're going to do that. Counting is one of my big issues. Started out with the right number, but somewhere I've added a few stitches. Yeah, that is definitely tricky. My guess is, and I think I've talked about it, well, how do they come off? Okay, we're going to, every time you knit around, oh, hold on, I'll come back to that. My guess is when you are, the most common way to accidentally add a stitch, just inadvertently, and I don't even know if I'm going to see it. This is where I need a top-down camera, and I don't have it during live, but is when you go, let me read, where am I at? Okay. So I'm knitting, right? And what it's hard to do when you knit and purl is what you're going to end up doing is you're going to accidentally wrap, when you're wrapping your yarn around, you've wrapped it twice. And so when you come to it, it'll look a little funky. It won't look like our, how do I wind it through my fingers before I yarn over? I keep letting go of the yarn. Okay, I think I understand. Sorry, that was a Patreon question. Didn't want to lose it. You know, when you come to it and you're reading your yarn, when you come to this stitch, if you've added a stitch, 9 times out of 10, it's like a slip knot stitch. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to definitely tell you how to account for that, but it will look different. I know how to make one, but I'm not going to make it right here live, but I will definitely make sure that that's part of the week 3 tutorials, is showing you how to do that. Each time on my switch sample, I counted each time to knit 2 purl. Yes, exactly. So you just want to do that slow and steady. Counting is want to make good. A friend asked me this. I didn't know the answer, so just trust her. I trust you, and it's fine. If you're around your head is 20, why are we using... Okay. If around your head is 20, but we're using 16-inch needles, I hadn't even thought about that, because it's squunched up. Like, you wouldn't want to knit, like you wouldn't want your tension of your yarn to be exactly what you want. Like when I'm doing a sleeve, it's a little 12-inch. And when I'm doing a sweater, and my sweater is actually like a girth of, I don't know, let's say 45 or something all the way around, I'm actually knitting on 32-inch. And because you can squish it up, and it just makes it so much easier to handle and to maneuver and to grab the stitch and go, go, go. If it was stretching, I'm trying to think. You're going to see exactly what I'm talking about when we start decreasing. When we decrease for the crown, we're going to decrease from 108 all the way up to the top. And at some point, it's going to get really tight. And you're going to be like, I can barely move it around. Well, right now, you just get that. So that, I hope that makes sense. Yeah, it just works, Sarah. It just works. It's the magic. I know. Yes, you can squeeze it. Oh, good. Linda answered you. I swatched the knit and purl, a thicker yarn until I got it figured out. What happened? You stopped? No back. For if I bought the set, I was just trying to figure out what other items I would use the Likey for if I bought the set in your Amazon store. Like I said, the Likeys I use for sweater sleeves and beanies. You can use it for any, or if you're going to use it for a cowl, because it comes with not only a 12-inch cord, is what comes with the Likey set. It comes with the cord. I don't have the paper, but it comes. So this makes another 16-inch cord. This makes maybe a 20, a little bit longer. See, there's a little bit longer of a cord, and then even longer. So what are the, now obviously these are circular needles, so you have to be thinking about what I'm going to knit in the round that's going to be this diameter. Well, a hat, a cowl, and so yeah, so there's a 12-inch, maybe a 20 and a 24, maybe. I'm telling you, I use the 12, which makes the 16 inches for my sleeves, and for like a cowl, basically it's like a beanie tube before your neck type of situation. You know, one of those, but it's a little bit bigger. So that's what you would use for this rather than, or a scarf, but a scarf you knit flat, so you don't need circular needles for it. Could you just buy us more? No, that's a great question though, Miss Sarah. No, you cannot. And the reason is because the tips are 3 inches. And so the tips on a sock needle are shorter than that. And so they get even shorter. So just the tip, I'll bring some socks next time and I'll show you. I don't have sock interchangeables because I haven't quite successfully knit a sock yet. So, but the actual, like the tip part of the socks is even shorter. And so if you did, they don't sell like 3 and then a 3-inch cord. First of all, a 3-inch cord is not going to give you enough to go around, if that makes sense. So the cord is, I'm going to say the cord is, let's say 6 inches, 5 inches, and then the tips are each 2 instead of 3, if that makes sense, to give you, because if you know what I mean? Hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, that's why you can't do it. Okay, good. I wish you could, but really, if you go down the rabbit hole of socks, you're going to have to figure out. I know whether there's a lot of different schools of thought with the magic loop or the 9-inch circulars or the DPNs. I know people in all camps. And right now, I don't know what camp I'm in because I haven't successfully completed a sock. But I like the concept of a 9-inch because it's like this much smaller. But I can tell you that during my sock knitting experience, I get a little cramped, like a little, because it's so minute and small. So I don't know. Maybe I might have to try a different camp. That could be my problem. Let's see. Any other questions? Fixing a slip stitch can be tricky. Yeah. Yeah. True. True. Can you buy a small? Have you knitted? How long have you knitted on the long straight needles? I have knit on straight needles before. I don't like them as much. I like circular in that because I like the products that circular make. Straight needles are kind of scarves. I'm not a team scarf for some reason. Give me all her, so they're like weapons. Oh, good. I love my circulars. Yes. Yeah. So I'm team circular. It's just, even when I'm looking at patterns for sweaters, and some of them are knitting, even when you knit flat, I knit on circulars. Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like I can't, It's just, anyway, that's why I like it. Okay. I know there was a question on Patreon, and of course I read it and then I moved on, and so I know I've totally forgot, but I think it had to do with holding your yarn and in your right hand. Let's see. Okay, hold on. Backwards. So yeah, so this, I just take my knitting, this is my knitting go bag, and that whenever I'm a passenger in a car, I can't stitch in the car. It just makes me dizzy, but I can knit in the car. So let's see. I guess I use this finger for tension. I kind of hold it, the whole tail in my three hands, and my three hands. I don't have three hands. It's getting late, friends. Three fingers, hold that, and then I use this one to kind of tell it where to go. And so that's probably what I do. I don't even know what I do, to be honest with you. But that's what I'm doing. So I'm holding the cake tail, the extension of the yarn with those at least two fingers. Sometimes the middle finger goes a little rogue, but sorry, I'm not looking at you or reading. I'm making sure that so yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm holding it down definitely with these two and kind of keeping it. And so then the tension is taut. So hopefully that helps. I think it was Gwen. Does that help your question? Hopefully. So that's how I keep it in check. All right, hold on. I don't want to lose where I was. Okay. Let me just make a stitch to not lose the marker and put it back. Okay. Let's see. A couple other questions. One other question that I got on the Patreon was, she'd asked about the nifty loop stitch. So when you're connecting in the round after you cast on and you did that nifty, she called it nifty. I love that. The nifty little move over, slide over comedy do to kind of close the gap. Did you do that every time you came around? No, you only do that the one time, because that's just to close off your initial circle. Okay, I'm going to read that in a hot minute, Sarah. So that's just to close off your circle. And once you come in the circle, I mean, I'm sure if she's gotten into the ribbing, she will realize, oh, I don't need to do that. No, you don't, because you don't even know where you started if you didn't have your beginning of round marker, which is why we have our beginning of round marker, so that we know where we started. And so that when we start switching gears up, when we start to go to section B or when we start to go to section C of the hat, we know where we end and where we switch. So that makes sense. So my ribbon is looking great. Awesome. But I noticed one little line that looks like maybe I got knit and purl backwards. It's the only one. Is that a normal newbie's mistake? 100%. Yes, 100%. In that, unless you're sitting there and keeping constant, I'm going to be honest with you, the knit and the purl, the 2x2 is not my favorite because it's not mindless enough for me. It's kind of like fill in with stitching. I'm a super fan of setting up for a prairie schooler Santa fill in that you do all the pre-work, right? You do all the pre-work and then all you have to do totally mindless. And that you're like, let's just fill in Santa's coat. We're good to go. I don't have to think about squat. Well, that is my favorite part of beanies. I'm going to tell you, section B, which is week 3. That's my favorite part of the beanie is B. I wish B could go on forever. Because A, I feel like I have to think just a little bit, just enough, or I'm using my brain, or I'm like, okay, 2 knit, 2 purl, 2 knit, 2 purl. Oh yes, you totally just leave it. It's just your own little design element. And to be honest, it depends on where it is in your stitch, because remember these bottom, so your ribbing, well, my ribbing's going to be 4.5 inches. I'm not fully ready to go, but it's 4.5 inches. So 2.25 inches, my watch is going to talk to me in a minute. My 2.25 inches is going to fold up over those inches. And so what, oh good, yay, Gwen. Okay, good. Sorry, Gwen just popped up on my Patreon. So you know, these are going to cover those. Not that you need to cover it. I'm just saying that if it happens to be in that area, gravy, because you're going to cover those knit stitches anyway. So let's see. Could you just make a hat with the knit stitch? Yes. You can stitch your mistakes, but explaining it is hard. Yeah, exactly what Linda said. So to answer your question, Lucille, can you just knit a hat with the knit stitch? Yes, you can, but the ribbing, you will look, and again, shame on me for not bringing in some finished examples that I could actually put on my head and show you. You can, but it won't give you the stretch. Like my first one, my Legacy Fiber Arts, the one I didn't swatch for, and I only did a ribbing band. This was a hat called the Marley. It's a pattern on Ravelry by Tin Can Knits, who is a if you haven't traveled down the Ravelry rabbit hole, that's a fun one. But it was a free pattern. The barley hat, I don't remember. It's something like that. And that it only had a tiny little band, like a 1-inch rib here band. But the reason that you do that is because ribbing always is it creates a tighter, it goes in a little bit. And so like when you're making socks, when you finish a sock, there's always a little bit of ribbing at the top, because that's your like cuff, your elastic. And so you wouldn't have the let's stay on it unless you did a really aggressive negative ease in your knit stitch, which is like one of those beanies, like if you go to Costco, let's say, because we have Costco hats in the closet too, I'll be honest, that are just knit stitch around and around and around, but they have a much stronger negative ease. So if you look at them, they stretch a lot more. So they're making up for the fact that there's no ribbing stretch because they knit a tighter swatch. If that makes sense. Oh my goodness. My gosh, my fold will cover it. Yes, that's exciting. Okay, good. Crochet is so much easier, but I love to try the knitting one. Crochet, yes. It's totally different. I'm terrified that I'm going to lose my stitches off my needles and all those days of work with cross stitch. There isn't anything I can't fix. Okay, but Sarah, I know you have these things. Nothing's going to fall off. The pool noodles will save you. You are good. You're good. Fixing a knot stitch you can learn. Yes. Yes. Listen, I've dropped half a needle off. If you catch it, you can usually go back and just visually see them and pick them right back up and no worries. I've also, come around and realized I dropped a stitch like three rows back, and you can see where it's not picked up. And then we have to crochet and kind of bring it back up to the top, and it's fine. It's fine. It's all very fixable. It's anything more complicated than cross stitch. We can do it. Yeah, it's called a drop stitch. Yes. Yes. But you can do it. It's easy to do. And pick it right back up. You use the crochet needle and you just kind of like create this little, the little knit V, and just go 1, 2, 3, catch it back up in line, and then it's back in line and good to go. Okay, friends. So those are all the questions that I have noted. And I think I've run through all the questions that have come through the scrolly thing. So let me know if there's anything I did miss. But otherwise, I'm just going to let y'all go. And hopefully, yes, we're going to figure it out. Don't fret. But you're not going to drop one. You're good. Yeah, YouTube University for sure. For sure. This is how, but I am going to show you as much as I can. Definitely during week 3, we're going to transfer needles. I'm going to talk about a drop stitch. I'm going to talk about if you magically added a stitch, how to fix that, to recover from it. You're welcome. I'm glad this was helpful. I wanted to make sure if there was any math questions. I was adding stitches. I think maybe I was forgetting to move my yarn to the front. Yes. Yes, I think that was it. Oh, good. Yes, I know. It's so exciting. No trolls this time. Yay. Shelly had called me earlier today. She's like, okay, I'm ready to moderate. I don't know all the things. Da, 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 da. I couldn't figure out how to set up the moderator. And really, she'd just be sitting there making the, basically bashing the trolls on the head. It's like whack-a-mole, but whack-a-troll. So I'm super excited that this works out. And that way, it's just us fun knitters. We don't have to deal with all those things. I check the 10 each time to make sure. Yes, yes. I know that was I loved it for when I was casting on, I'll be honest, because it gets even more complicated when you knit a sweater, just so you know, and it's like cast on 252 stitches. Are you kidding me? And I can tell you that sitting there and counting and getting to, 167, and then your finger moves or the whatever, and you have to start over again. Forget about it. So these are a lifesaver. And they're super. Oh, we're totally going to do a sweater. It's so easy. It's not so easy. But beanies. Beanies for days. Beanies for days, friends. I'm telling you, a sweater is easier than socks, in my opinion. Because it's just like a bigger beanie. A smaller beanie. Adding the heel of a sock counting is hard, for sure. Yay, sweaters. Okay, good. Team sweaters. Yay. Because the heel of the sock is like my kryptonite. It really is. Shelly taught me how to do it once in Amana. And I have a heel. But that's it. The sock is not complete. Yeah, no socks. Yeah. Although I do wear socks more often than I wear beanies. And sweaters take forever. But they're super fun. They're super, super fun. So hopefully, yes, we're going to do a sweater. First, we're going to finish our hats. So week 3 is coming up. And so hopefully everybody's going to knit and purl and get caught up. But I'll be honest with you. So right now, week 3 is on Monday. And we're going to talk about the body section, which is the 4 inches of your body, which is just knit, 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 knit. And then we skip to the crown decrease, which is in theory the next Monday. We're just going to play that bear. I think we're going to touch base next week to see where we are, because I'll be honest with you, the crown decrease week is actually also market week. So I will be leaving on Wednesday of the crown decrease week to drive down to market. And oh, you want to do a wrap? Oh, that's fun. We can also do those in circulars. Maybe we could do those on the leggies. I'll have to see. I'll have to find us a wrap. I'll have to find a wrap pattern and see if they need to. I think because a 24-inch sounds like it would be perfect. Shawls. Yes, perfect. Marker, 20 minutes for me. Oh, that's fun. So yeah, so on Wednesday during Crown Decrease week, I will be driving down to Tennessee and doing market for 5 days, getting stuff for the keeper clubs and such. So I wouldn't be able to do a live that week. So we're going to touch base next week and see where everybody is. I definitely don't want to rush everybody. And so if we need to like build in a cushion week to give everybody catch up time on whether you need to catch up on your ribs or catch up on your knitting, I don't want to stress anybody out. So because the crown decrease is going to be a little tricky, because that would be all one piece. I think we can do it. Yes, we can totally do it. The sweater's all one piece too. Don't worry. It's all one piece. I don't do the pieced ones. I do it top down, all one piece. You separate for the sleeves. It's all one piece. Anyway, so we're going to touch base on it next week during our live and see. Going to Tennessee in May, need to know what China. Oh, that's fun. If we wanted to add in a cushion week, or if we want to just kind of keep chugging along and you're going to come back and catch up. I just wanted to be able to, when we do these lives, for you guys to actually be doing what I'm doing. I felt like the gauge swatch was good and this is good, but getting through 4.5 inches of ribbing could be some time, could be a time commitment, and we have stitching to do. I know. So, just trying to balance. No rush, no rush. I'm here for you. So we're going to figure it out, work together. We'll talk about it in Patreon. Cushion week will be helpful. Weeks is not. Okay, good. That's what I was kind of thinking, that we might add a cushion week during that week. So I'll come back on this coming up Monday and talk about section B. And then give you the 2 weeks until we start the crown decrease so you can catch up as needed. But hopefully by then We'll see. We'll see. We'll just touch base. Keep me posted. Keep tagging me on Instagram if you're sharing your pictures. I love to do it. Thank you. Yes, everybody have a great weekend. I'm going to be back here for Floss Tube Friday tomorrow. All the things. I don't even know. I've been knitting the whole time, but I do have a little bit of stitching. So we'll share that tomorrow. And yeah, tag me on Instagram. Share. Have you guys checked out the Patreon chat? I know I have a handful of friends that are in there, and that's a great way where we can just share pictures and cheer each other on. And it's kind of like the chat feature, but everybody's there, because I know the hashtags don't work all the time on Instagram, but if you tag me, Tiger Lily, and not just hashtag it, then I definitely try to see it, and I share it to my stories. If your account is public, I can share to the stories for all to see. So yay, I love everybody sharing. I love everybody seeing and cheering each other on. There's so many people that are hopping on even now that are getting their yarn and their needles and catching up, and that's awesome. I wish we could have like a group photo of all of our beanies together, but it's going to be so much fun. All these fun beanies, all these stitchers turn knitters, and hopefully we're having a good time. So friends, thank you so much. This was fantastic. Yay, no trolls. Yay, I think we got all the questions answered. So that's all I've got for you guys today. So, happy knitting, friends, and I'll see you next week. Bye.